What is up, people? Phoenix here. After I posted videos where I spoke several languages, a lot of people ask me, do you mix up languages? The fact is that I do. I mix up languages all the time. When I'm speaking Chinese, sometimes I rack my brain to search for the appropriate word in Chinese, but the only words that would come to my mind are in English or Korean or Spanish or whatever language that I've been most frequently exposed to. And that it reminds me of something that I want to talk about today, namely linguistic purism. Over the years, I've dabbled into different languages and different cultures. I've noticed that in some societies outside of the Anglo-Saxon world, or outside of the English-speaking world, and outside of the former colonized sphere, for example, India or Pakistan. In a lot of societies, a lot of communities, people have adopted a certain amount of English words in their daily speech. In some societies, these words have fully integrated into their daily life. If you speak Japanese or Korean or Russian or a lot of other languages, you know what I'm talking about. But in a lot of the other societies, this phenomena is considered a negative thing, where if you use a lot of English vocabulary in your daily conversation, it might be considered unnecessarily fancy or pretentious, and sometimes offensive for contaminating the national language. And it happens in my native culture too, and Chinese culture. And there's this complex where English has a lot of positive implications. For example, high education, more liberal ideas. But on the other hand, it's kind of contaminating the Chinese language. There's nothing wrong with taking pride in your native language. And I myself, I try to keep it as pure as possible when I speak Chinese. I secretively condemn myself for using English words whenever I'm speaking Chinese. Linguistic purism, when someone says he wants to keep a language pure, there's something more or less self-contradictory in that idea. If you look back into history, you will find that language purification movements have happened in almost all societies in the world, and even in the Anglo-Saxon world itself. For example, in England, there have been waves of purification movements, and a lot of big names, a lot of big figures are big advocates for using only words of native origin. Now, the word native may mean different things to different people. To some people, it means using words only of Anglo-Saxon origin, and to others, it means Germanic origin. And depending on what it means, it might require you to speak the pure English before the Hadrian's Wall was erected, or before the first Romans stepped on the island. George Orwell, for example, he is famous for using only small words of Germanic origin instead of big Latin or Greek words popular at the time, because he thought those words are unnecessarily fancy or redundant and gets in the way of the very purpose of language, which is communication. And he also thinks that those Latinized or those Greek words, they have implications of linguistic elitism. Another example of linguistic purification movement happened in North Korea in 1958, I believe. I might be wrong, don't quote me on that. This very movement has caused almost the greatest linguistic bifurcation after World War II, where North Koreans and South Koreans have great trouble communicating with each other. Now, they're mutually intelligible, and with some circumlocution, they can understand each other without any problem. But a great portion of their vocabulary differ.
도덕 없다는 게 뭐 싸가지 없다 그런 건가요?
싸가지 없다? 그건 뭔지 몰라도 느낌이 아주 세고 좋은데 아랫동네 욕입니까?
Hamburger, which is hamburger in South Korea, but is 고기 교박 in North Korea. Another example is ice cream, which is just ice cream in South Korea, but in North Korea it's 얼음 과자. So these are the examples where North Koreans would use native Korean words. And there are other occasions where they use Sino-Korean words or Hanja, or Chinese words. Helicopter in South Korea is helicopter, but in North Korea it's jiksengi, which is identical with its Chinese counterpart. And there are all kinds of different types of linguistic purism. There's elitist purism, there's reformist purism, there's patriotic purism, and in most cases, it's often a mixture of all these ideological justifications for the purification movement. Now, any statement that advocates for linguistic purism, I think, is in itself a little bit self-contradictory, because what a person means by pure completely depends on his cultural and ideological and ethnic identity. And there is no such thing as absolute purity of any language, because any major language in the modern world is a hodgepodge of all kinds of languages, clashes of tribes and civilizations throughout history. From now I'm going to speak Chinese because I want to use my native language as an example. 中文的纯粹性呢，就取决于你觉得什么是纯粹的中文。因为有很多人说崖山之后无中国，你可能会觉得崖山以前就是中古汉语，宋朝的汉语才是纯粹的汉语。如果你觉得我们要用一个没有被日本人创造的汉字词污染的汉语的话，那我们现在很多日常的生活用语都没法用。比如说，我们甚至我们的国家的名字都要改了，因为共和国这个共和就是日本人创造的词。但是共和这个词在中国古代就有，西周的时候，这个周厉王逃出镐京以后，周朝共和的这一段时间，这是共和的来源。但是日本人把这个词变成了现在的这个 republic 这个概念，然后创造了共和国这个词。如果你觉得这种词算是污染了汉语的话，算是玷污了汉语的纯粹性的话，那现在很多汉语，那整个汉语就要重新改革。当然，从某种方面上来讲，日本人帮助我们保留了汉语的某种纯粹性。比如说科学民主，我们现在不说德先生、赛先生，不说 democracy and science，国际主义我们也说国际，我们不说英特纳雄奈尔。然后这种层面上来讲，我们也算在某种程度上保留了汉语的纯粹性。但是我觉得，保留一个语言的纯粹性，它是保留这个民族或者是保留这个国家身份认同的重要一部分。但不能过分执着于完全保持它的纯粹性。如果引进外来语或者偶尔使用外来语进行交流，而且没有造成通话障碍的话，我觉得不是一个很大的问题。So these are some of my thoughts on that, and there are a lot of interesting historical anecdotes on the topic of purification movements. And if you're into languages, I'm going to share a few links on my Weibo account. So if you're interested in that, please follow me on Weibo. And yes, I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.